I'd like to welcome you to this session. With the permission of the Executive Secretary, I'll be changing the methodology of this conversation very slightly. I will only give 5 minutes to the presenters, and we'll have a discussion session, a question and answer session, because this is meant to be interactive. Rather than being a monologue, it should be a dialogue. So in that sense, we'll only have 5 minutes for the presenters. Honorable Ministers, I hope you don't mind. You'll be given only 5 minutes to share your experiences with us. In this particular session, we are looking at the experiences of countries, and we are looking at some cutting-edge innovations or initiatives that the continent is currently undertaking. And the panelists will be sharing their experiences with us in terms of those initiatives, what has been the role of science, technology, and innovation in those initiatives currently going on the continent, and how can we scale up? What is it that we need to scale up and have bigger development impact than we're having currently? Africa is still a small player in the battery electric vehicle value chain, but there's a lot of potentials for us to be the biggest player in that space. What do we need to do, and how do we need to do it? That's the kind of conversation we'll be having this afternoon. But before we delve into that, let me share some thoughts with you, since I have the floor, and as moderator of this session. I could also engage in some of the conversation we've been having since morning. 3 major points. One is that I think we need to take cognizance of the dynamics taking place in terms of knowledge production and innovation. I think there's a whole democratization of innovation in the world. It's moved from the traditional orthodox space of universities to a whole, knowledge highway that we have. It's not only universities, it's not only technical colleges that produce knowledge any longer. Knowledge is completely democratized. And as we plan for education, we need to take cognizance of that democratization of the knowledge and innovation space. The second point for me is that it's important for us to also take cognizance of the context and ecology of innovation. In other words, what are the main incentives for innovation on the African continent? What are the incentives that we have for it to take place? Some will argue that probably if Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Meta, were to be in Africa, probably he will not be where he is today. It's out there, the jury is out there whether that's true or not. But the ecology, the incentive regime that we give to innovation is extremely important. What is it that we have on the continent? I think this is something that policymakers need to speak to. And the final point I'd like to raise has to do with our lived experience in relation to innovation. I think that's extremely important, and that's the point that the minister was making, the Minister of Education from Zimbabwe. I think he was speaking to the fact that education, innovation, technology must speak to our lived experience as a people. It's extremely, extremely important. We've got about 80% of our population in the rural areas. What does it say to us about the kind of technology we're developing? During COVID-19, there was this picture of this young girl, a rural girl, which was in the social media. And there was a whole encouragement that internet should be used, students should go virtual and all that. And this girl was going without shoes. And the commentary was, what about us? What about us? We are completely disconnected. Are we not also entitled to education during COVID-19? And for me, that speaks to how we deploy technology, how we deploy innovation to support the majority of our population, because we've got about 80% of our people domiciled in the rural areas. So we need to, as we think through our engagement, both at the global, regional, and national level of technology initiatives and innovation, we need to relate with our lived experience as a people. On that note, I'll call our first panelist to speak to us, His Excellency Dr. Engineer Ambatu Itefa Galeta, who will be speaking to us on harnessing the continent's energy needs with green hydrogen. Honorable Minister, I'm sorry, you will have only 5 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, Excellencies and guests. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers also to give us this chance. By the way, when we talk about innovation, that is the real direction. Innovation is coming out, especially in developing nations, mainly in Africa. So there should be some mechanism of devising solution how to accommodate the world in a peaceful way that it will be helping for everyone can equally serve it on this globe. Coming specific to today's topic, harnessing the renewable energy mainly on green hydrogen, I think Africa should be the one who should champion about this kind of alternative options. Before saying detail about it, these days people are getting aware of searching for alternative mechanism of devising energy source. We know so far fossil fuel has been the one taking the big rank, then after other alternative source. But there is a question globally in terms of survival of the entire nation from environment, from carbon emission, that really a lot of people have been paying big price, mainly we, European nations, where we contribute less for the pollution, but we are the one to harness the maximum of that. I think it's a good opportunity for us to see the world is aware and say, let's get out of that. If you remember, some of us who have been on COP28, UAE, I was there. The main agenda was mainly running here and there in terms of energy. Therefore, the concept of green hydrogen was also popping here and there, and the people are saying. Scientifically, when we are talking of green hydrogen, still people have been using hydrogen in one or the other way, but this day, the term green is already added upon that. Why it is green? When we say hydrogen is produced, the way we produce, the resource we use matters. In Africa, we do have clean water, surface water, groundwater, which is perfectly our good bargaining power. Second, we do have big option of potential of renewable energy source, wind, solar, if we can see them. If we combine the existing renewable energy source with from the available water source, really what we are going to produce is a green hydrogen. Because we say it is green, the entire process is coming throughout without or with very minimum pollution to our environment. Conceptually, the idea is to disintegrate the hydrogen and oxygen from our water component that we are having. Anyone can say, okay, yeah, I can make green hydrogen from seawater, ocean water. We can imagine how much cost it will be even to purify that, then to convert that one to green. But in Africa, it's not in that way. If we see in the east part, Ethiopia mainly big hydropower potential, in central part, the west part, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and many of them, they are really blessed with our river and water source. So decomposing this water into the hydrogen component that is purely green, that can be used for any purpose, that energy can be utilized. So the process that we use in the system is using solar, wind, and so on that are so helpful to bring and to compose that one. That's why I say Africa should take the championship, the leading role, because now everyone is aware what's going on from energy production. They are seeing where are our resources. In Africa, we do have good start, thanks to our African brothers like Mauritania. They are on good move. They are showing us. If we take my nation, Ethiopia, our country, we already have a draft policy of the green hydrogen that the government believes is vital, is important, because our existing energy is more than 92% from hydropower, which makes it green. We do have good quality water, and groundwater, surface water, and then the entire system really can be 100% sure to say that it is a green hydrogen. So once we get connected to our neighboring nations as well, our neighbors can get utilized out of that. So the entire Africa can get connected from north to south, from east to west, and then can utilize that technology. But one critical assignment I think we have to take into account is about the cost of investment, which is so high, so huge. Of course, these days the price is getting lower. By 2030, it's expected to have like not more than $2 to $3 per kg to produce that. Just before a week, I was on science and the concept into actions. That's all. Thank you, moderator.
Much Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister has proposed to us that we need to consider very seriously the issue of green hydrogen empowering the continent. Of course, some others will argue that perhaps we need to go nuclear.
Using the COVID-19 vaccine that you're talking about, the first part is to understand really what is the issue you're trying to solve. What is the epidemiology that you have, be it in your country, but also on the continent. So there needs to be work to understand the burden of disease that you have on the continent. The second important part is the research and development part. This COVID vaccine, as you know, was we were able to have it on the market just 1 year after getting the sequence of the virus that caused COVID-19, which is SARS-CoV-2. But there has been fundamental work that investing in higher education is extremely important, both in basic sciences, but as well as in translational research. So we're talking about the level of PhD levels, postdocs, extremely important, and to have it here on the continent, but with collaboration with the world in general. The third part of it is the clinical trial. Clinical trial, understanding, again, the burden of disease, the specificity, the virulence, the response to different vaccines that we have. It needs to be run on the continent. And maybe let me use Rwanda as a country. We have 10 clinical trial sites working on different diseases and molecules that are pertinent for the country, but that you can extrapolate to the continent to a certain level. The fourth important pillar is the regulatory affairs part. If you're talking about vaccines, you want to produce vaccines of top-notch quality that will benefit the continent and the world in general. So we have our Food and Drug Authority, which is a young organization, about 5 years of age, but that has quickly matured, and now it's on the brink of receiving its, by WHO standards, what we call maturity level 3, which is the level of quality and standards that is required to produce vaccine that can be exported everywhere. But beyond that, it needs to be regulated at the level of the continent and harmonized so that a vaccine that is produced in X country can be scaled to the other 50 plus countries that we have on the continent. So African Union has been working on the Africa Medicine Agency that is going to be headquartered in Kigali, that will be the body to harmonize all these vaccines that we're working on the continent to serve the 1.5 billion people that we have. So it's extremely important to have that. Now, after you've done all that, that's how the biomanufacturing comes in part. And for that, you need partnerships. Partnerships that tackle issues with the most up-to-date technologies. So for Rwanda, for instance, we have partnered with BioNTech, which is a leading biotechnology company, is the one that maybe most used for the vaccine. They partnered with Pfizer to have the COVID vaccine. And they have set up the first plant outside of Germany. So the headquarters is in Kigali, BioNTech Africa, that was launched end last year. The beauty of it and the choice of it has a reason, because the mRNA technology can respond to issues that we have that are unfinished on the continent. We are talking about infectious disease, HIV, TB, malaria. The technology of mRNA is quite flexible, that you can design it to solve many issues. But there's also a second part. If you look at the demographics of a continent and the epidemiology, we are facing this double burden, unfinished business of infectious disease, but a looming issue that has already started actually of non-communicable diseases. We are talking about cancer, cardiovascular diseases, and others. This technology will be able to be flexible to deal with all of this, which is extremely important to scale on the continent and be able to respond to any pathogen that might come. So the choice, the strategic partnerships with firms that are able to deal with issues that can be multi-pronged, not just tackle one disease, but being able to be flexible to move from disease X to Y and whatever will come in the future. Delivery, and then the important thing is to see how to market shape. So the BioNTech Africa company has a capacity to produce 50 to 100 million doses of vaccine per year. That's for the entire continent. The question here will be, and the other countries that are working on that as well, how can we, based on the value chain that I've explained, build our systems to be able to scale something that has worked. Sometimes it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel, and put it in different parts so that we're able to serve our continent. I think this will be the important part of vaccine manufacturing on the continent. It works. There's a model that shows how it can work. We just need to take it up and to scale it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think we've taken the first step in Africa, and that's creating the African Medicine Agency, which is going to be in Kigali, Rwanda. Zanabi, the Acting Director of the Trade Facilitation and Inter-Africa Trade Fair at the Africa Zimbabwe. Gimo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I would like to start by acknowledging ES for basically putting this important, long overdue session, which is actually speaking about practical things that needs to be done to get the African continent ahead. And listening to my minister, I actually feel motivated because there are practical things that we really need to focus on. And the solutions are here in Africa. And as Afreximbank, we have been working with a number of partners. And UNECA has basically been an excellent partner in trying to assist the continent to actually focus on industrialization. And people have been saying we have potential, we have the resources, but I know that with the same with you, honorable ministers, when you go to your people, people don't eat potential, so they need tangible things. So what we have decided to do at Afreximbank is to find out why is it that we've got minerals. We allow some companies to come to our countries, they drill holes, they dig the dirt, they carry it away, and we don't benefit. We are exporting income, we are exporting development. We see our young people dying crossing the Mediterranean. Maybe they are right, they are following their resources. We need to put a stop to that and ensure that we add value to our resources. And if you look at DRC and Zambia, DRC has got more than 70% of cobalt. Everybody needs that, copper. So we actually sat down with UNECA. There was a forum that was organized in DRC, the Africa Business Forum. In 2021, we actually said, what is it that we can do to help DRC and Zambia to add value to their minerals and transform their economies, create jobs for young people? So what came out of that forum was that we actually need to focus on establishing special economic zones, one in Zambia, one in DRC, to focus on this battery and electric vehicles value chain. Why is it important? The potential is huge. Because when you look at just the mining segment of the value chain, it's estimated that it's worth about 11 billion, right? So if you are playing just at the digging, the dirty drilling holes, you are not getting anything. But if you move a step towards the value chain, you focus on refining and processing these metals. It could be nickel, cobalt, lithium, and graphite, etc. You can actually produce phosphates. So when you do the refinery, you produce these metals. You are actually moving from 11 billion to 44 billion. Continue on the value chain. You can actually do the next step where you produce battery precursors. You are moving from 44 billion to 271 billion. You can actually see the value that you are putting in the continent. And if you go a step further, you produce you now assemble the battery cells assembly. You actually are looking at a value chain that is worth about 387 billion. Then let's now fast forward to electric vehicles. The value chain is basically estimated currently at around 7-8 trillion. By 2050, it will be around $46 trillion. So you can look at the potential that the continent is actually sitting on. That is why Afreximbank, working with UNECA and also other partners, African Development Bank, Badia AFC, we actually said as Africans, we need to pool our resources together to actually support DRC and Zambia as pilot to actually add value to their minerals and transform these economies. These are the things that will actually make sense. And if you look at what we are now doing, we've done a feasibility study. Afreximbank does just not talk. We actually execute. So the feasibility study has been completed, and it's very clear that DRC and Zambia are actually cheaper locations to produce these batteries. They've even beaten China, US, and Poland, based on the feasibility study we've done. and we're going to work with these countries to establish special economic zones. And the impact in terms of employment, we are looking at, just on a minimal side, we are looking at 15,000 jobs being created directly and another 25,000. But if we link it to the science and technology, you actually trace the value chain from the mining all the way to the production of batteries. We need skills, we need engineers, we need people who actually understand how to do the battery processing. So these are some of the things that we need to focus on. So these are the things that Afreximbank is focusing on, and we have done this in other countries. I can give you an example. In Nigeria, we actually focused on supporting the Dangote refinery. Afreximbank was the first to put billions of dollars on the table to say this can be done. And right now, the refinery is coming up, and we can do that with each and every mineral on the continent. This will allow us to transform the continent, and I want to probably leave a challenge with every one of you in the room that in the next probably 10 to 20 years, we really need to actually focus on science and technology and industrialization. I wish if all the heads of states, when they come to the summit, the thing they focus on is just science and technology and industrialization. This is what will actually help us to develop our economies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Give more. I think the message here is yes, we can. Yes, as Africans, we can do it. But I think as we craft our special economic zones, we must make sure that we crowd in domestic capital. We must also make sure that we create intersectoral linkages in terms of how we evolve this, so that at the end of the day, we do not create special economic zones of which external interest will be dominant. I think we need to take cognizance of that. And working with Afreximbank, I think that's something we're going to pay a lot of attention to. We move on to the next panelist, Mr. Abdullahi Diang, Senior Program Manager, Google AI Center in Ghana. Mr. Diang, you have the floor, please.
So before I start, I just wanted to mention something. I was making a demo presenting the flood forecasting solution to Honorable Minister of Zimbabwe of Education, and he said technology is only as good as it is useful, and that really resonated with me, and I think this is something we've been trying to follow. We've set up our Google AI Center in Ghana 5 years ago, and we've more recently expanded into Kenya. In my team, I have research engineers, research scientists from all over Africa: Ethiopia, Cameroon, Benin, Sudan, Senegal, Kenya, and so on. But the point is that they are all pushing the boundaries of AI on the global stage, not just for Africa. And we are all driven by the need to tackle African challenges. And I would just like to explain maybe 3 ways we've done so. The first one is agriculture. We know that agriculture is a key sector. A lot of people depend on agriculture, directly or indirectly. So what we did is we partnered with Makerere University in Uganda, and we built a model that was small enough to fit in a phone with the idea of tackling crop disease. So just imagine that you have a plant doctor in your pocket, and the farmer can snap a picture of a cassava leaf and get the image analyzed and get information about the disease and what information to take, what action to take, sorry. The important thing is that once we basically finished building this model, we released the source code and the model to the public for anyone to use. That is very important. Sparkling innovation is what makes change sustainable. We can't do it all by ourselves. The next thing I would like to talk about is mapping. We know that incorrect maps can hinder development. So what we did a few years ago is that we built a model that can scan satellite images from all over the continent and detect as many buildings as possible. In total, we've detected over 500 million buildings. And again, we open source the data. Anyone today can download the whole building footprint of Ethiopia, Rwanda, and many other African countries. But here's the twist. The model worked so well that we ended up applying it to the whole global south. So now we've actually detected 1.8 billion buildings in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in Africa, South Asia. Today you can download the whole footprint of India thanks to our work. And here what I want to stress is that it's an African-made innovation that's had a global impact. And this is very important. This is not just about our continent. My team came out straight of African universities, and most of them public universities. And they are at the same level as any advanced research scientist or engineers that is working in Mountain View in California. That is, again, very important. The next thing I would like to talk about is languages. And UN Secretary General talked about languages, how important it is. We've all heard the buzzwords today, you know, LLM, large language model, generative AI, and all of that. But here's the question. In this amazing technology revolution, does it include us Africans? My dream is that, let's say, a kid in the rural Ethiopia will have access to the same AI-powered tools for education, language support, access to knowledge as any other kids in the world. Imagine that you could translate from Amharic to Oromo in an instant, from Oromo to Swahili, from Swahili to Lingala to Kinyarwanda, and so on. What would be the impact of that? I'm talking about without passing through English. Wouldn't that, you know, get us closer and improve trade and understanding? So this is the questions. On languages, my feeling is that we really need to prioritize digitizing African languages. And if we don't, what's going to happen is that we won't be able to shape this amazing AI revolution. Rather, it is going to shape us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dieng. Our language is a powerful source of our identity. It defines who we are. That's extremely, extremely useful. Also, the mapping that you're doing, I think is wonderful. It's going to be very useful to policymakers, from the security policy sector to the planning development sector. I think this is something you should place at the disposal of our policymakers. Thank you very much for the wonderful work that you are doing in Google. We'll move on to the last presentation before we open the floor, and that's going to be by Dr. Anthony Kijinji. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your name well. The CEO and Managing Director of Semiconductor Technologies Limited. Doc, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think a language model will help with my name. So I'm really, really excited to be here, Executive Secretary, all protocols observed. It's not every day that an African like me can sit in front of you and talk about advanced semiconductor manufacturing. So it is really important for me to hear all the synergistic conversations that have come out today, and more importantly, around the minerals and the value chains. So I'm here to talk about Origin, and Origin is Origin Innovation Labs, to be precise, is a brainchild of UNECA and also supported by the Association of Entrepreneurial Universities and in Africa. Our part on how we play into this is as a commercial partner. And I'll start by perhaps telling you a little bit about how semiconductor technology came into the continent, and specifically in Kenya. So my background is I've been in the semiconductor and advanced microchip manufacturing globally for over 25 years. And in all my forays back and forth from United States to Europe to East Asia, what I found out is that the supply chain, as vast as it is, which is $570 billion a year, and by definition, a supply chain is an interrelated mix of activities, including distribution, manufacturing, finance, policy. In all those 25 years, there was not a single time when I sat in advanced conversations in Samsung or Global Foundries or other places where Africa was even in the picture with regard to value chains, supply chains, with the exception of minerals. And even then, the minerals, which account for about 60% of the bill of goods for the manufacturing of advanced technology, is literally hogged out of our ground and shipped for value addition elsewhere. And so through all that time, it was clear to me that the supply chain was very disproportionately designed. So much so that notwithstanding all the investments that exist globally in semiconductor and advanced chip manufacturing, 0.01% comes into the continent in terms of the total value of $570 billion. Semiconductor Technologies Limited is the only semiconductor manufacturing company in the continent. We're located 3 hours from Nairobi in Kenya, which means we're in a rural community. Our vital statistics are that we are 100 employees now after 3 years. 70% are women engineers. Our demographics are, we are 25 years old on average. Well, if you add me, it's about 35. And these are the most vibrant minds, and that'll explain a little bit about origin in just a minute. So the barriers to entry of advanced technology and industrialization in the chip technology space, in my experience, was number one, was workforce and skills. I know the Honorable Minister talked a lot about heritage education 5.0, I believe. I think that a lot of merit has to go into our institutions. However, the disposition of the education system is designed for job seekers. However, if you look at Kenya, where I've been now for 5 years after moving from the United States to start this venture, Kenya is a very vibrant hustler type of an ecosystem. Everybody has a side job, is doing something different. So there's not a shortage of energy for us to be where we ought to be. I believe there's no shortage of academic energy for us to understand foundational concepts around advanced technology, manufacturing and otherwise. So what's the gap? The gap, in my opinion, and I'll tell you this, it's not a very flattering thing for me to tell you, but what I heard from the large chip makers as I was trying to convince them to get entry into the continent was, well, we just don't feel that the African continent has the capacity to absorb advanced technology. So I said, fair enough, so what do we need to do? And I said, of course, it's rhetorical. I know that our institutions can generate the capacity that we need. And so the first barrier to entry is skills. The second barrier to entry, secondary by far, is CapEx. The third is policy. And then, of course, we started addressing some of these issues deliberately and started our venture in 2019. Unfortunately, we landed, or I should say fortunately, we landed right in time for COVID-19. Now, COVID-19, as abhorrent as it was, actually shaped what STL is today. 100+ engineers doing amazing things in advanced technology. And why did that happen? Is because our business model was built on bringing in enterprise from United States, Europe, and Far East into the continent wholesale and starting an enterprise. Well, COVID-19 showed that that was not possible. All the supply chains closed down, and so we had to do it organically. Today, Honorable Chair, one of the things I can report to you is in terms of advanced technology, those young men and women 3 hours away from the capital in a rural area are producing the most advanced technology that there exists in the continent. And so we've solved the skills issue or the perception of a skills issue. In terms of CapEx, obviously we need a lot of investment inflows to support the CapEx. We need government intervention, obviously. Today, Executive Secretary, one of the things that is important to me is not only did I come here for the forum, I came here and met partners. We're working with a Frexim Bank right now, talking about how we can create capacity in the mineral value chains and workforce development. We're talking with Google and others about how can we hyperscale some of the platforms that we're trying to build. We're talking to many different people, including the Botswana government through the NEO Hub, on how we can start creating centers of excellence for chip manufacturing in the continent. So about Origin. Origin is a platform that puts together research and development innovation towards the creation of enterprise, micro SMEs, SMEs, large cap companies, and generally the global supply chain. So what it is an ecosystem that has the academic to commercial nexus that allows for ideas to originate or ideate and go into production. And so Origin, a brainchild of UNECA and United Nations and the AUEA, is a really, really vibrant and important part of what we believe advanced technology and industrialization will be to the African continent leading up to 2030 and 2063. So with that, I'd like to appreciate all the guests that have spoken wildly about all the things that we're doing. I really appreciate the value chains for minerals. Semiconductors are built out of minerals. All the vanadium, titanium, all these minerals that need to be purified, right, have to be built on silicon. Right now, we have evidence in Uganda and other places that there is the right type of polycrystalline silicon that can actually manufacture silicon wafers. And that means the value chain for silicon has to be observed if we are going to be successful in microchip manufacturing. So with that, thank you very much, and that's what we're doing with the Origin Labs.
Very much, Dr. Anthony. I think there's nothing to add to your presentation. I think we are connecting to the global value chain with chip production. And India also, went through this process in which the diaspora had to go back home for them to have that kind of transformation in terms of the kind of production base on semiconductors that they have currently in India. So we're on the march. Africa is on the move.